Okay, what other exciting things are coming in our future that are going to save us and save the planet? Well, the planet doesn't really need saving. Planet will go on. Some species are already getting hurt because of our greenhouse gas emissions, and biology will survive. As we said before, nature makes the rules, biology finds the loopholes. The question is, what about us? What happens to us? So this idea of solar highways has been proposed and tested, but in general the conclusion so far seems to be that they are not going to be a big part of the solution because they don't work as advertised, let's say. Okay, but here are the concepts. This is from ICAX. This is from the so-called Solar Highway Project. There's a long YouTube, there's a 7-minute YouTube video you can find on that, which shows many of the exciting possibilities, at least. So here is a road that is designed with solar energy being absorbed with the ICAX solar collector. Heat is transferred to the earth thermal store via pipes. So heat is being put underground, and there is a ICAX thermal store that's built in, and there's an insulation layer. So when summer comes, you have cool roads that don't hurt the car, the tires so much, may even reduce the use of ACs in the car, etc. And then when winter comes, the heat is released from the store via the transfer pipes to the road, so you can keep roads ice-free, snow-free. You can also use solar panels that are made of material that can be embedded into the road, slightly different than here, but that then they say can be on the fly redesigned to have parking spots, reassign handicapped parking spots, reassign lanes, walkways, bike paths, pedestrian crossings, and so on. And there is even ideas of having internet running along and doing similar energy exchanges to remove snow, ice, and so on and so forth. So exciting, but so far I haven't found any evidence that these are going to work at large scale yet. The other thing that's exciting is so-called urban farming and vertical forests. So this is in Porta Nuova district in Milan, so it's not an artistic rendition, it's a real. So people have become concerned about pollution, so many trees can be selected to improve air quality and so on, and you can imagine that these are doing plenty of additional carbon sequestration and compensating for your energy use and cooling the building, reducing energy demand for cooling, and green roofs, rooftop farming. All sorts of good ideas exist on using the vertical space and building tops as well for reducing energy use as well as sequestering some carbon. Other exciting ideas include what is happening with the corals and how to protect them. So there are corals which are responding okay to the warming in some places, and there are some that are suffering a lot. So this is an experiment done in a lab on the Great Barrier Reef, how a spectacular coral spawning event is helping to breed heat-tolerant corals. So they are artificially breeding, spawning the corals in a lab and using genetic information and so on, and doing crossbreeding, kind of genetically modified crops. We have had all kinds of genetic techniques are being used for treatments, stem cell treatments, medicines, and so on and so forth. So helping ecology survive heat and let them even thrive under hot waters maybe even acidic waters is going to be exciting as well. So those are definitely coming. And human health is a big thing under climate change. I have a whole course on climate and human health, and I introduced some of it in the impacts. This is just the expansion of the Aedes aegypti mosquito starting in Africa and expanding all over the world. With warming, as the tropics expand, rainfall, water vapor, vegetation, and other conditions become favorable for mosquitoes to survive in higher and higher latitudes and altitudes. With that come tropical diseases like chikungunya, dengue, and so on into higher latitudes as well. And human habitat destructions and humans living closer to the woods are also causing diseases like Lyme disease in parts of the US. They have also some unintended consequences. What is the exciting news there? Mosquitoes are now bred with bacteria called Wolbachia, which is it doesn't do anything to human beings. Mosquitoes, when they become host to this bacteria, bacteria competes for reproducing within the mosquito and essentially completely reduces the dengue virus, for example. And such mosquitoes have been released in areas where dengue occurs, like Indonesia, parts of Australia, and so on. And data have been collected to show that the dengue transmission has been reduced significantly, sometimes as high as 75%, because of these Wolbachia infected mosquitoes. So bacteria and viruses don't reproduce sexually, they just multiply, but they need a host. They don't multiply in the air. They need cell, like COVID, which is using human cells to multiply. That's all they do. They multiply and they spread. They make you cough, sneeze. There are other viruses which transmit through sex and so on and so forth. It's called extended phenotypes, and they use us as vectors for them to propagate across. And they are not always trying to kill you. It's just that human immune system overreacts and thinks it's a foreign body and begins to fight it, and may even end up killing you, like with the oxygen drop in humans, the so-called cytokine storm, where the defense system antibodies go crazy and then attack the body and kill it, and so on and so forth. So this is a very exciting development, Frankenstein type experiment, but I don't think so far there is any indication of unintended consequences of Wolbachia infested mosquitoes being released into human habitats and collecting data on reductions in dengue transmission. There is a whole host of literature on the so-called natural solutions or nature-based solutions. So this is from nature.org, nature.com article, sorry. Nature-based solutions working with and enhancing nature. So instead of creating these kind of genetically modified corals or mosquitoes, you try to work with nature. So there you want to do carbon sequestration and storage. So these go under human well-being, under climate change mitigation, human well-being under and biodiversity, human well-being and climate change adaptation, and disaster risk reduction. So I'll go through these just because the range of things is interesting to look at. Carbon sequestration and storage is possible with forests. Local climate and air quality improvements can be done using nature-based solutions. So those are under climate change mitigation. Slope and shoreline stabilization, so reducing erosion and impacts of storm surge, sea level rise, inundation, and so on. Coastal protection, again, same thing. Recovering mangroves, for example, defense against cyclones. It improves oxygen, it improves nutrient filtering coming from land, improves biodiversity, fish yield, and so on and so forth. Flood control, of course, possible with urban forestry and vegetation. Erosion prevention, fertile soils, soil health goes up. Pollution control, pest and disease control, food production. Raw materials can be produced this way as well. Fresh water, so you reduce runoff and you increase soil water retention, groundwater recharge, and so on. Medicines, of course, we get lots of medicines from vegetation, from many plant species. Entire field of Ayurveda is based on this kind of approach. Genetic diversity and recreation and tourism. Okay, those are the various co-benefits you can think of. So natural climate solutions, top 10 mitigation pathways with co-benefits. These are natural climate solutions, have the same impact on emissions as taking millions of cars off the road. So reforestation is equivalent to taking off 650 million cars when it's done to its full potential. There are lots of details. There are studies done on showing what the potential for tree forest restoration is across the globe. Avoided forest conversion can save 620 million cars worth of emissions. Natural forest management, avoided peatland impacts. Peatlands are good store of carbon. As you know, peatlands, basically any carbon that's in the soil can over time become coal as well on geologic timescales, but they are basically very carbon rich soils which keep the carbon sequestered for long enough time to avoid climate change. There are, of course, peatland fires happening everywhere as well, which is again related to human activities. Cropland nutrient management, it reduces water pollution emission from agriculture that we looked at, and can be worth 136 million cars worth of emissions. Trees in croplands, called agroforestry, which can enhance soil carbon, retain soil moisture, increase drought resilience, soil moisture persistence, provide non-rainy season income, and generally improve quality of life for women, children, and families that rely on subsistence farming and so on. Peatland restoration, so this is avoided peatland impacts and this is peatland restoration. Conservation agriculture is again where you do things like low tillage, organic farming, natural fertilizers, drip irrigation, and so on, where you reduce impacts of agriculture on the soil and hence emission reduction also, worth 80 million cars of emitting on the road. Restoration of coastal wetlands, I already mentioned mangroves, but coastal wetlands are of course great transition from land to the ocean, filter out nutrients, increase oxygen, provide a place for migrating birds, lots of species of tiny fish and frogs and reptiles and snakes and so on. And avoided coastal wetland impacts. So there is restoration and there is avoiding impact. So this is a global mitigation potential that one has to achieve, but knowing the potential is of course always important. So let me leave that here and then come back to the so-called carbon trap that I mentioned before, and then we will transition to what individuals can do for reducing their own impact on the environment and emissions. Okay.